I think Super 7 is trying to tell us something. Hey guys, Jay! Welcome back to the channel. Guys, Super 7 has been doing something sneaky right now. They keep teasing us with these in-shadow examples and photos of something. I mean, we all know what it is. For crying out loud, it's Cats Lair. But this latest tease really did pique a lot of people's interest, and several talented people have gone ahead and tried to reveal what's underneath all that shadow. And I want to take a deep dive and try to figure out exactly what we're looking at here and possibly what the size is of this crazy playset. Guys, if you enjoyed this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post up to 2 episodes a week, and I hope you guys enjoy. And don't forget to hit that bell notification so you guys will always know when new episodes are posted. Without further ado, guys, let's take a deep dive into this and see exactly what conclusions we can come from with these reveals. And huge thanks to everybody who made this possible. You guys are the best. Let's have a look. This single image sparked the imagination of an entire community, and it continues to be debated and discussed about whether or not this is going to be scaled on a reaction size or a ultimate size. And there have been multiple groups and toy tubers talking about this, including our friends over at Geek Dad Life, Mad Hatter Reviews, and of course, Toy Habits. All of whom continue to make their own speculations, but I think the overwhelming consensus is that this is probably going to be a Ultimates scale Thundercat playset. That in and of itself is just mind-boggling. And Super 7 is not helping us, considering the fact they keep teasing us with all these new updates every few days. This was posted on the Super 7 Facebook page and continued to enthrall fans with speculations. So much so that friend of the channel, Motu Comic, went ahead and did some wonderful Photoshop work to try and bring out some of the features that are hidden in the shadows. And I gotta tell you, he did a bang-up job. We can really see some wonderful details here. My brother Dex actually went ahead and said, I think they're trying to sort of incorporate the Thundercats logo into the actual head sculpt itself. And I sort of agree with him. If we look at the shape of the overall head, it really does emulate the Thundercat symbol quite closely, particularly where the jawline actually meets up with the upper lip. There's this tiny little cleft here, which really does harken back to the actual Thundercat symbol. Even the teeth themselves are curled inwards, very much the way the Thundercat symbol is. If we were to get a proper profile of this head sculpt, I think we would see just how similar it is to the Thundercats logo. It's even indicative of the actual ears, which are recessed back instead of up, which is a very interesting feature of the Cats Lair head. But today, things were literally turned upside down when Super 7 posted this just a few hours ago. Oh my gosh, people just went into a frenzy looking at this particular image. I mean, now we get to see the overall shape of the Cats Lair. And fans like Kyle Belair here have actually taken inspiration from Motu Comic and also brightened up in Photoshop all of the details to actually see underneath the shadows what we should be looking at. Huge thanks to Motu Comic and Kyle Belair for allowing us this tiny little glimpse into the Thundercats Cats Lair 3D renderings. Let's take a deeper dive into this, guys, because there's a lot to unpack here. This is very much a Rankin and Bass cartoon style of Cats Lair. I think we really can put to rest the idea that they are going to take any inspiration from LJN, except for one particular point, and I'm going to get to that in a second. If we compare this rendering to the actual LJN playset here, as presented by Laura Legend, we can see just how different they are. This, of course, is more of a toy, which is inspired by the cartoon, but created with kids in mind, with the overall play features and gimmicks that are associated with it. This, of course, is an adult collectible and has really taken most of its inspiration from the Rankin and Bass cartoon. The LJN playset could not be a full-size Cats Lair in the scale of the LJN figures. That's just impossible. As we can see here, the playset itself is already massive. I mean, looking at Laura Legend just sitting beside this thing, it really does dwarf many playsets at the time. But in my estimation, it's about 1/3 the scale that it should be for the scale of the LJN figures. In a similar vein, I believe Super 7 has taken that into note and done a very similar treatment on this. This is probably 1/3 the scale to 6-inch figures, meaning that there are certain things about this particular playset which are going to be much, much smaller. A real sticking point for many fans is that the Thunder Tank, yes, I'm going to go ahead and say it, will not fit under any of these paws in this scale. There's just no way the Thunder Tank would be able to fit under either of these paws, as clearly evident by the size and scale of this playset. And I know how many people are going to be disappointed by that, but let's be honest, if it was in proper scale to the Thunder Tank, you wouldn't be able to fit this into your house. It would be absolutely ginormous. Looking at some of the finer details, zooming in here, I really do appreciate what Super 7 has tried to do here. Basically trying to create a Cats Lair from the show in action figure form. And they've done a bang-up job. Although the head is a little bit more stylized than what we've seen in the cartoon, it really is a wonderful sculpture, bar none. I am very, very excited by that. The collar piece around the neck, as well as the Thundercats symbol on its tag, really is indicative of what we've seen in the cartoon. The only thing missing seems to be the little drop piece, and in certain continuities, that was never there. The shoulders and spikes at the top of the lair are very indicative of the actual Cat's Lair in the show. Very similarly, the towers, which are the arms of the cat, are almost identical and wonderfully represented here in action figure form. The torso and rib cage have been faithfully restored here as well. Again, in certain angles and certain illustrations, they did look slightly different in each iteration of the show. But I think this is a wonderful realization for an action figure playset. And then we come down to the main courtyard of Cat's Lair, and we can see just how faithfully realized that's become here, as the courtyard is enough for any refugees or peoples of Third Earth to visit the Thundercats and have an audience with Lord Lion-O. We can see the staircase leading up to the second level, as well as the main entrance of the Cat's Lair. This is an interesting point, which I'm going to get to right now, as the staircase is still represented here faithfully, and what would normally be the main entrance appears to be blocked in some way. I'm not sure if this is a defensive doorway and that it actually drops down to reveal the hallway towards the main entrance, or if this is just something of a compromise for this particular playset, considering the overall limitations of size and scale. I'm inclined to believe the latter, and that they're actually going to end up using this as a secondary entrance instead of the main entrance. And clarifying that, if we pan up to the third level, this is where things are really changing in terms of the overall appearance from cartoon to toy form. We can see here a gigantic door, and in many ways, I think this is now the new main entrance. Originally, the third level observation deck had an entranceway where the Thundercats could step outside and observe Third Earth from this vantage point. This is also the location where Lion-O had his coronation and was finally crowned the Lord of the Thundercats. We can see that here, just above the main entrance of Cat's Lair. Again, this entrance from the main meeting area of the Thundercats, where they have their meeting table observation monitor in many of the shows. I think this will become the main entrance of the Thundercats' lair, considering this door, in my opinion, will end up not being used as an entrance at all. I will say that the paws themselves, which are supposed to house the Thunder Tank and the Feliner, as well as parking for other vehicles, are scaled relatively well. I don't mind the overall size of them, but obviously they're not going to be able to house a full-scale Thunder Tank. We can see the gears on the left and the right paws. They're wonderfully realized, and I really am grateful that Super 7 was able to consider that as part of the overall sculpt, as it just wouldn't be the same without them. I really do have to say that Super 7 has done a bang-up job with this particular sculpt. If we compare this directly to Dario's version of the Cat's Lair, which I featured in a previous episode, I really do think that Super 7 has done their best to create a worthy version of the Thundercats' lair for fans of the series. I imagine the paws of the Thundercats' lair will be similar to the way Dario has actually constructed them here, being more short and stout, and again, taking some cues from the LJN version, where they could only really lift up and down at a very steep angle, remaining quite short overall. But still, the way Dario has achieved this, a wonderful compromise for the scale that he's been working at. And I imagine this is very similar to what will happen with the Super 7 version going forward. This, of course, is all speculation, and it remains to be seen just exactly how they're going to solve that problem. But now we get to the overall idea of scale. And in doing so, I decided that I would do a little bit of photoshopping to see if we could try and figure out this mystery of how big this Cat's Lair could possibly be. I will say, first of all, that I think that the main entrance will end up being the observation deck. I do not believe the main entrance, the traditional main entrance, will be used as a main door for the Thundercats and any 6-inch scaled figures. The Thundercats, of course, as well as the Master Universe Classics, are 7-inch scale, but are still referred to in the 6-inch scale realm. I actually believe that this will be an entrance more for the citizens of Third Earth, being smaller stature and can fit inside this smaller door. Thundercats themselves, I believe the main observation deck is where they will start entering the Cat's Lair from. Taking that into account, and if we consider that this is at least 7 inches high, I went ahead and did some Photoshop work of my own, trying to figure out exactly how big this playset would be. Here is the Cat's Lair, and as you can see, I've actually positioned Lion-O and Mumra where I believe they will be able to stand in front of Cat's Lair to enter the Cat's Lair from the observation deck. And I have to say, this is frightening. I mean, look at the size of these characters compared to the Cat's Lair. This is absolutely crazy. Zooming in here, we can see that Lion-O is about 7 inches tall, whereas Mumra is closer to 9 inches. I believe he's 8.5, 8.75. This is crazy. The main entrance should be a little bit taller than 7 inches to accommodate for 7-inch figures. And I gotta tell you, this is going to look absolutely amazing if it does fall within this scale. Now, you might think this playset must be absolutely ginormous, and how the heck are we going to get it into our homes? If my assumptions are correct, I wanted to scale this Cat's Lair to an existing playset which has already been provided by Super 7. Yes, of course, guys, I am talking about Snake Mountain, everybody. Snake Mountain is, of course, a playset produced by Super 7, so we do know that they are able and more than capable of creating a playset this large. Now, this is the prototype which was originally solicited for the crowdfund project back in 2019. I do have to preface this by saying that this is about 8 to 10% larger than the final scaled version that was actually delivered to fans. But I think that within that margin of error, we can get some good results using this as a base. We can see just how big this playset is compared to Man-at-Arms, a 7-inch figure, and Beastman, another 7-inch figure. Taking that into consideration, switching back to the Cat's Lair scale that I've put together, all of a sudden, the Thundercats don't look that big compared to the Snake Mountain example. In reality, they actually look rather big compared to their Masters of the Universe counterparts. Keeping that in mind, I decided that we should do a proper comparison, well, as close to it as possible. So I went ahead and did even more Photoshopping and came up with this. In order to get this scaling absolutely correct, what I ended up doing was clipping out Beastman, who is basically 7-inch scale and probably the same size as Lion-O, moving him from his position and lining him up pretty much in the same position as Lion-O. Their angles aren't exactly the same, so there is going to be a slight margin of error, but this is basically the size of Lion-O standing here alongside Beastman. Zooming out and putting that into perspective scale, guys, something amazing really does come to light comparing these two more or less side by side. I think it can be easily said that Snake Mountain is just about the same height, if not a little bit taller than Cat's Lair, if we're to take these two scales in approximation. And by that note, I think we can safely say that Snake Mountain is crazy in terms of its overall width in dimensions compared to Cat's Lair. This gives me a lot of hope, guys, because considering the fact that Snake Mountain was also crowdsourced and possibly predict what Cat's Lair might be priced at. After all, Snake Mountain was a singular crowdsourced project, no additional tiers, no additional stretch goals. Everything that you see here that was provided as Snake Mountain was done for one single price. That price, of course, being $600 if we head over to super7.com. That's right, everybody. Snake Mountain cost a whopping $600 back on April 24th, 2019. It's been a few years since then, and inflationary costs have risen quite considerably. But I think it's safe to say that if Super 7 can produce a Snake Mountain at $600 in this scale and this size, Snake Mountain seems to double the width of the Cat's Lair and even towers slightly over Cat's Lair in terms of height. I think the possibility that Cat's Lair could possibly be in the same sort of price range, considering for the fact that Snake Mountain is just that much wider and comes with a host of accessories which were included with the playset. The throne, the meeting table, the tentacle monsters, and 2 acid pool creatures, as well as the Wolf's Head Tower. These were items which were included with the entire $600 price tag. And if that's the strategy they're going to employ with the Cat's Lair, having the Cat's Lair as the main product and having additional features like perhaps a meeting table, a monitor which maybe lights up, and other additional features, possibly even a miniature Thunder Tank and a miniature Feliner, which would be absolutely amazing. I think quite possibly we could be looking at a $600, possibly $650 price tag. This, of course, is a pipe dream considering the fact that inflation has risen considerably since 2019. But looking at the size of Snake Mountain and what they were able to offer, I think we might be in luck and hopefully will fall within that price range. Now, I know there are going to be a lot of people out there who say that we really don't know the scale yet. And this is true. I'm just making assumptions based on what we've been teased with and the fact that myself and several other fans have taken the liberty of brightening up a teaser image, which for the most part is not really supposed to show us exactly what's going on. However, with all that in mind, it's always fun to try and guess exactly what we're going to be getting in final form. And there's still going to be people out there who say, well, this thing is nowhere near the size it should be, but that's true. And we have to also take into consideration that Snake Mountain is nowhere near the size it needs to be. I mean, if this was actually the proper 6-inch scale, it would be bigger than your garage. And if you don't believe me, good friend of the channel, Skelevator, has actually built 2 Filmation-style Snake Mountains for commissions for friends and clients. And this is nowhere near the scale of the proper Snake Mountain. And it still towers over anything that has been constructed by any company, including Super 7. And believe me, this is still not big enough. Having said that, though, I am absolutely tickled pink that Super 7 is moving forward with their plans for a Cats Lair, regardless of the scale that it's in. Whether it's reaction size scale or ultimate scale, I am absolutely all in on a Cats Lair. And if my assumptions are anywhere near correct, I am hoping that Cats Lair will fall within the scale and size of Snake Mountain, giving us a possible chance at getting a Cats Lair under $700. As I think anything over $700 will be just a little bit too much money for fans of Thundercats. Guys, this is an amazing opportunity, and I really do hope that Super 7 is able to pull this off, but it really will all depend on how much Cats Lair will ultimately cost. Oh my god, guys, this is absolutely crazy. Everything here is speculation. Everything. We have no idea what's actually going on or what the scale is and how big this is actually going to be. But it's just so much fun, isn't it? Just so much fun to actually take some time, a little bit of photoshopping here, a little bit of scale and, ideas of how big this is going to be, and then try to correlate that to price. I mean, let's look at this. Let's look at it this way. Snake Mountain, which is right over here, this thing is absolutely massive. I mean, seriously, take a look at this thing. This thing is absolutely huge. And it was offered by Super 7 in 2019, April of that year. And that being the case, we do know that Super 7 can handle these types of big playsets. That being the case, that monstrosity came in at $600 plus shipping. That is an outrageous price when you really break it down. However, it did get funded and a lot of people did purchase it and have them in their homes, much like myself. That being the case, I think we can safely say that Thundercats has a fan base probably a little bit smaller than Master Universe, but it's still possible. So that magic number really has to be taken into consideration. And considering that that thing was $600, it's going to be a bit of a hard pill to swallow if it goes anywhere above $700, even in the current climate of toy prices. However, with the breakdown that we did earlier today, I think we can possibly say that given that the correct scale was actually guessed properly, this thing might actually be a little bit smaller, or possibly be the exact same height as Snake Mountain. And given that information, that truly means that this is nowhere near the overall width of Snake Mountain. It's actually going to be pretty much half of Snake Mountain. Taking that into consideration, that means that there's less plastic, less manufacturing, and it doesn't need 2 pieces to actually put it together. That's amazing. Having all that information together, I think that if it's literally just the front half of the Cats Lair with some inside details, maybe a meeting table, maybe a monitor, maybe something, right? We have no idea. Maybe, a miniature Thunder Tank, a miniature Feliner, which would be absolutely amazing. Possibly, quite possibly, this could come in under $700. After all, Snake Mountain over there did come with the Wolf's Head Tower, the meeting table for Skeletor's forces, Skeletor's throne room, and of course, the Tentacle Monster and 2 acid pool creatures. That is a lot of accessories. And I think that if they stick to that with the Cats Lair, we could be looking at something absolutely magical. But guys, let me know the comments. But guys, let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, this playset is not small. This thing is absolutely gigantic. And are you going to put down your hard-earned cash for your own copy of a Cats Lair to add to your collection? Or is this absolutely ridiculous and you're absolutely not in any position to pick this up, considering the fact that it could possibly be $700 or even up to $800, and in some crazy scenarios, depending on the actual overall size of this thing, possibly $1,000. Oh, guys, that's crazy. Let me know those comments in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, guys, please do leave me a like. It really does help me out. And if you're in the position to help out the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon page. It's Mega Retro on Patreon. Guys, the patrons and channel members of this channel help me make wonderful episodes every single week, and I couldn't do it without them. They are the best. I really appreciate all your support, everyone. It really means the world to me. Guys, I hope you're all doing well, staying safe. And as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Thundercats! Ho! Good journey. Geek proud. I want to give a huge shout out to all my Patreon and channel member supporters. Thank you so much, everybody. It's thanks to your support that this channel continues to grow, and I really could not have done this without you. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your support, guys. It really means a lot and really helps the channel to keep growing.